Good morning. I'd like to first start by thanking Phil and all of the commissioners and the Sherpas for a lot of very hard work in a very short period of time. This report comes at a time when we're facing a number of critical issues that we've defined as the new reality that we live in. And when we think about that, we know that the status quo is not sustainable. And so we looked at this with a lot of energy and a lot of new resolve. And that resolve really fell in three areas. It was how could we take our insights, the deep understanding of the industry based on the 32 companies that work in this industry every day, coming together and talking with the government. How could we take that and look at the innovation that's available today through the technology and the different service offerings that are available today and use those to have an impact on where we're going in the future? And so in order to get started, because we are largely technologists, we had to put together a process. And that process began with a series of interviews. And those interviews, we interviewed government customers, we interviewed commercial companies, and we went through about 105 subject matter experts. And we looked at that data along with the large body of reports that have been produced. And if you look over the last 3 to 5 years, and you'll see in the appendix a large number of reports that have done a very thoughtful job at looking at the market, looking at recommendations for how we advance IT in this marketplace. One of the key observations we had as a team is that although these recommendations were very good, for some reason people hadn't adopted those recommendations. And so we decided to take a different approach with the report, to look at those recommendations, decide what the key areas that could really make a difference are. And next chart, there are 4 that we found that are very key areas that could make a big difference. One is engagement. The engagement between us and our government counterparts. The second was agile development, or an incremental approach to delivering solutions. The third we found was how do we manage risk on large complex IT processes, and the other was project management. How do we ensure we have the right project managers? So with those 4 findings, we said, why haven't the recommendations been implemented? And we looked at the obstacles that preclude them from being implemented. And we put together an action plan to address those recommendations associated with removing those obstacles so that we could move forward. Next chart. And so if we look at the first recommendation, which I believe is engagement for this presentation, maybe. And if we look at engagement, we looked at it in terms of what are the obstacles that preclude us from having the engagement that we need, not just once you've won a contract, but very early in the life cycle, right at the beginning. How do we make sure that when there is an RFP, that we have people communicating effectively on what is the art of the possible? And how do we make sure that that communication goes throughout the life cycle? And we looked at the things that preclude that from occurring, and we said, how can we put together actions that will address those areas? And you'll note in each section that we have actions for OMB, we have actions for the government agencies, and we have actions for industry, because it's very important that all 3 groups work collaboratively if we're going to move the agenda forward. The next area that we talked about was risk management. And most of us know inherently that projects, particularly large complex IT projects, have a high level of risk. But why isn't that risk known early on? Why isn't it identified and then mitigations put into place? What are the obstacles? And again, we looked at how could we as a group remove those obstacles and move forward. And one of the areas that we focused on was something we called a no-fear zone, where the contractors would come together with the government and talk about problems or areas of risk in a no-fear zone where there's no penalty or punishment, and that way they could collectively work together to move the agenda forward. And so that was just one of many recommendations that we had. And with that, I'll turn it over to Steve, who's going to talk about program management and agile development.
Okay, let's see if this works here. Thanks, Linda.